Yes, my friends, something big is brewing behind the scenes at the Detroit Lions, and if Brad Holmes plays his cards right, our team could finally solve one of its biggest problems, getting to quarterback. The latest bombshell we received in the last few hours could shake up the entire NFC, and man, you need to hear it. But you better sit down so you don't fall backwards. Before I tell you all the details, I want to hear from you. If you could fire 2 people from the roster and hire 2 in their place, who would it be? Comment below. Your opinion is very important. And of course, if you're a passionate Detroit Lions fan, hit that like button hard. Now, come with me. We need to talk about him. Trey Hendrickson, the NFL's sack leader in 2024, has just been given permission to seek a trade. Yes, you heard that right. The Bengals, in a surprising move, have opened the door for one of the league's most dominant pass rushers to explore his options. And with the Detroit Lions in desperate need of a true edge presence, this is the kind of opportunity that doesn't come around often. The question now is, will Brad Holmes finally step up and make the move that could take this defense to the next level? If you've been following the Lions, you know this team is on the verge of something special. They have the offense, they have the culture, but when it comes to consistently pressuring the quarterback, they've fallen short. Last season, they made the mistake of adding an elite pass rusher at the trade deadline. Instead, they took a chance on a young prospect, and while the jury is still out, it wasn't the kind of move that strikes fear into opposing offenses. Now, with Hendrickson officially on the market, the Lions have another chance to fix that problem, and this time, they can't afford to get it wrong. Hendrickson isn't just another name. He's a game changer. Over the last 4 years, he's been among the most productive pass rushers in the league, racking up sacks at a rate that puts him in the same conversation as guys like Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. And let's be clear, those are the names that define elite edge rushers in the NFL. The difference? While Garrett is locked in with Cleveland and Watt isn't even an option, Hendrickson is available. The Bengals, for whatever reason, are willing to let him go. It's the kind of situation that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, unless you're a team looking to capitalize. And here's where things get really interesting. There's already a built-in connection between Hendrickson and the Lions. Dan Campbell was on the Saints coaching staff when New Orleans drafted him, meaning there's familiarity there. That's not just a minor detail. That's the kind of thing that could give Detroit an edge in negotiations. If Campbell believes in Hendrickson and sees him as a fit for this defense, you better believe he'll be pushing Brad Holmes to get this deal done. So what would it take? That's the million-dollar question. Hendrickson is entering the final year of his contract with a base salary of $15.8 million and a cap hit of $18.6 million. That's not cheap, but it's also not a back-breaking number for a team that has the flexibility to make a move. The bigger issue is the cost in draft capital. Would the Lions be willing to give up a first-round pick for him? And if so, which one? If it's the 28th overall pick in 2024, that's a steep price. But what about a 2025 first-rounder? Or maybe a second-round pick plus a sweetener? That's where the real negotiations come in. Now, there's another factor in play. Hendrickson doesn't have a no-trade clause. That means he doesn't get to pick his destination. The Bengals, in theory, could send him anywhere. But if Detroit steps up with the right offer, they could land him without the same kind of bidding war that other stars might command. That's a huge advantage, and one that Brad Holmes needs to capitalize on. Let's talk strategy. If the Lions make this move, it needs to come with an extension. Hendrickson isn't going to want to play out the final year of his deal without some security. That means Detroit needs to be prepared to lock him in for at least another 2 or 3 seasons. The good news? He's 30 years old, not ancient for an edge rusher, but also not young enough to demand a massive 5-year deal. Something in the range of 2 years, $40 million might get it done. Would that be worth it? Absolutely. And think about the ripple effects. If the Lions land Hendrickson without giving up their 2024 first-round pick, they could still use that selection to bolster another part of the roster. Maybe they add another young defensive lineman to learn behind him. Maybe they go cornerback. Either way, they wouldn't have to mortgage the future to solve their most glaring issue. But let's be real. This all comes down to Brad Holmes. Last year, he had a chance to make a move for a top-tier pass rusher, and he didn't pull the trigger. Instead, the Lions went into the playoffs relying on what they already had. and it wasn't enough. They were close, but close isn't good enough anymore. If this team is serious about making a Super Bowl run, they need to be aggressive. They need to be willing to take a calculated risk. And this, right here, is a calculated risk worth taking. So, Lions fans, what do you think? Is Trey Hendrickson the missing piece for this defense? Should Brad Holmes go all in and make the trade? Or is there another move out there that makes more sense? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about it. Because one thing is for sure, this decision could define the future of the Detroit Lions. Now, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What exactly does Trey Hendrickson bring to the table, and why should the Lions make this move right now?
First off, production. Hendrickson isn't just good, he's elite. He led the NFL in sacks last season with 17.5, and when you look at his career trajectory, it's clear this isn't a fluke. Since breaking out with the Saints in 2020, he's been one of the most consistent pass rushers in the league. This isn't some overhyped free agent or a guy coming off one hot season. This is a proven commodity who has delivered year in and year out. And let's not forget the durability factor. Hendrickson has played in 65 out of 68 possible regular season games over the last 4 years. That's the kind of reliability you need from a high-impact player. The Lions have already dealt with enough injury concerns at the edge position, and if they're going to invest in a top-tier pass rusher, they need someone who can stay on the field. Now, let's talk scheme fit. This is where things get really exciting. The Lions' defense has been a work in progress under Aaron Glenn, but we've seen flashes of dominance, especially when the pass rush is clicking. Aidan Hutchinson has been phenomenal, but he's been doing it largely on his own. James Houston showed promise before his injury, but he's still an unknown. Adding Hendrickson into the mix would take so much pressure off Hutchinson and completely change the way offenses have to game plan against Detroit. Think about it. Right now, opposing teams can focus their protection schemes around stopping Hutchinson. They can double him, chip him, and force other guys to win one-on-one battles. If you add Hendrickson to that front, suddenly, offensive lines have to pick their poison. Do you slide protection toward Hutchinson and leave Hendrickson with a one-on-one matchup? Or do you focus on Hendrickson and risk Hutchinson running wild? Either way, somebody is getting to the quarterback. That's how you build a dominant pass rush. And that's what the Lions have been missing. And let's be real, this is the exact kind of move that separates contenders from pretenders. Look around the league, the best teams, the ones consistently in the mix for a championship, don't sit back and wait for things to fall into place. They go out and get the guys they need. The 49ers added Chase Young at the deadline last year. The Eagles went all in on their defensive front. The Chiefs have made moves every year to bolster their pass rush. If the Lions want to be in that conversation, they need to start acting like it. This isn't about making a flashy move just for the sake of it. This is about addressing the biggest weakness on the roster,